on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Not having to jump through those hoops, not having to go through a succession of sales and marketing meetings until they decided if they were going to make an offer or not. Being able to write a book, publish it 3 or 4 days later, and have reviews coming in and people enjoying that book a day or two after that was creatively really liberating for me.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
So normally when double acts appear, they always stand the same. Like Eric and Ernie always stood the same, and Anton Deck, who no one in America would have heard of. No. Deck is always on the left. We've swapped because we are radical, pushing boundaries, and we don't obey the rules, do we?
We certainly don't. No, there's we like to change things up.
We're disruptors.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed last week's episode from LBF, where we did talk to a disruptor, and I think he said he didn't like that term, but Michael Anderle is definitely somebody who's spearheading this industry, doing things differently. I suppose it's a good opportunity here at London Book Fair amongst the traditional industry and the indie industry around us to take stock of where we are with the change that's happening in publishing. I'm hearing quite a lot of noises from the traditional side that they're doing well.
Yeah, I think they've had 3 good years in a row, so yeah, which is great. There's no reason why they wouldn't be doing well. Some things I find a little bit weird. They'll talk about ebook sales going down, and we've mentioned that on the podcast before. And the thing that they're not taking into account is that none of those Michael's ebooks from last week, none of mine have. At least I don't think Mike's do, have ISBNs, so they're not going to be counted in those numbers. So, it's great. What we want is readers to be reading. It's not. It isn't really. It's not a competition between indie and trad at all. It's a competition between reading and Netflix, and reading and the other things in gaming and the other things that people can do with their time.
Yeah.
So the fact that we are in an industry which, if the numbers are to be believed, is flourishing, bringing new readers into the reading ecosystem, that's got to be a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, you mentioned Craig there, and the other thing that strikes me is it feels more vibrant than ever before, just in the writer-centric nature of the indie industry. How many people have come to us and said, "I've got going now. My first year, 3 books. I'm starting to pay bills." Craig, I think, has gone from 0 to 5-figure months.
Craig Zerf, yes, yeah, he's had his first 5-figure month, I think, quite recently. So he's obviously an interesting character. You've spoken to him for a testimonial, but they live on a boat. I don't know if you,
he didn't tell me that.
They live on a boat in London from South Africa. Used to have a manufacturing background.
It's a long way to come on a boat.
It's a long way to come, yes, and now. That's life-changing money. That's a minimum of 10 grand a month. There aren't many jobs that you can get.
That's great for him. What's exciting though is that he has become a writer because of indie publishing, and his readers are reading books that they love.
I think he's been a writer before indie publishing. He's been able to make money from it precisely because of indie publishing.
But he did say he was close to giving up.
Yeah,
he was on the verge of giving up when he found Mark Dawson, who was like a caped crusader, came to the rescue. Because you take your glasses off, it's a superhero you'll recognise. We have to keep glasses on. It's a secret identity. And today's guest is somebody who's been hugely successful, both traditional and indie, but it becomes very clear in this interview. His name is Barry Hutchison. I'm a big fan of Barry's. He writes perfect books for me, science fiction, humour, very Douglas Adams, Terry Pratchett inspired books. But he's somebody who was successful in traditional publishing. I mean, he wrote Ben 10 stories. My kids love Ben 10 cartoon character, big in the States as well. He wrote
Dandy. He's written for some big comics.
He ghost wrote for people, but he also wrote his own books. But it wasn't until he started self-publishing that his life changed, because he's now being financially rewarded for all that work and effort. And he understandably has views on the traditional publishing industry from a writer's perspective, which I think are very interesting. So we're going to hear from Barry, and then Mark and I will be back after that.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
So,
Oh my God, James Blatch. Let me ask you again. Barry Hutchison. Amazing. You're going to enjoy this.
I do apologise. The Americans are excitable people, and
They're quite full on, aren't they?
yeah, quite full on. Michelangelo has gone now, and I'm here with Barry Hutchison. Barry, thank you so much indeed for coming onto the podcast.
Not at all.
We're so excited to have you on the show. And we've been watching you from afar for a little bit because you're a man with
Slightly creepy sounding, but
It is creepy. Yeah, we check out your background, and I know everything. Just so you know. We want to talk to you really about your recent career, and you've transitioned, I think, quite successfully from trads.
Yes.
From that world
Yes.
to indie publishing. You're excited about the indie publishing and what it's done for you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So we want to talk about a bit of that, but you should introduce yourself so that people understand what you've been writing.
Okay, well, I started off 10 years ago writing children's books. I started writing a children's series based on the cartoon series Ben 10, which I know we have discussed a little bit.
Yeah, so my boy, I should tell you, there was a time when he was Ben 10, and every kid in the school had a Ben 10 lunchbox.
And they had lunchboxes and watches.
You didn't do that deal that Kenny, what's his name, did with Star Wars, where you just got 2%
No,
of the
sadly not.
merchandise.
Sadly not. I'd
that
be
would
living in
have
a
been-
palace made of gold
Yes.
on the moon, if that had been the case. But so I started off ghostwriting that stuff. I wrote my own series for HarperCollins. I ended up writing 12 books for
And that
HarperCollins.
was children's sci-fi as well? Or?
That was children's horror, the first series, about a boy whose imaginary friend from when he's 4 comes back when he's 12 and tries to murder him in a variety of horrible ways. So I wrote that was kind of for 9 to 12-year-olds. And then I wrote over 100 children's books over the next kind of 8 years or so. And then I discovered indie. And the reason I discovered indie actually was I was asked by a secondary school to go and talk to their students about how they could publish their own work. And I had absolutely no idea how they could publish their own work. As far as I was concerned, I wrote a book, I emailed it to a publisher, and a year later the book arrived, and that was it. That was my understanding of the process. So I thought I need to investigate this, and I thought kids are into technology, so I will try and I will write a book quite quickly, and I will self-publish it on Kindle. And because I had very little money spare, and I knew the kids, if they were going to self-publish, they would have no money, because teenagers generally don't. So I thought, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to invest any money in it. I'm going to design my own cover, I'm going to self-edit, and I'm not going to spend any money on marketing at all. So I wrote that book in about 3 weeks. That was the first Space Team book. And I put it out, and a few people bought it the first kind of few days. I think it hit 12 sales a day, and it stayed at 12 sales a day for about a week at 99 pence. And I thought, right, I'll try putting the price up to $2.99, and the sales kind of stayed level and even went up a little bit. And I thought, well, I'm making kind of 10, 15, 20 pounds a day. If I can do that with one book, if I bring out a lot of books, I can potentially make more money.
You're good at maths as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that quick calculation told me I can make more money by doing it that way. And I thought, I will just do that. I knew I could write lots. I had written over 100 books for kids. I could write quickly. So I thought, I'm going to write a second book. And I wrote a second book in a month. And the income doubled in that month. And then I wrote the third book a month later. And I had done no advertising, no marketing until that point, other than producing a new book. So the third book came out, and the income doubled again. And at that point I thought, okay, I now have a really solid proof of concept here that I can make much more money doing this than my traditional publishing. And what I also discovered was that I was having much more fun doing it. Because with traditional publishing, you might write a book and give it to an editor, and the editor goes, this is the greatest book that has ever been written. I will take it to a sales and marketing meeting. And the sales and marketing team then go, can we put a cat in it? Or can we have a unicorn on the front cover? And you go, well, there isn't a unicorn in the book. You go, yeah, but unicorns are big right now. So you then have to go, well, either I kind of compromise the book, or I stick to my guns and the book doesn't get published. So for 8 years I was going, okay, let's put a unicorn in it, or the equivalent, So then not having to jump through those hoops, and not having to go through a succession of sales and marketing meetings until they decided if they were going to make an offer or not. Being able to write a book, publish it 3 or 4 days later, and have reviews coming in and people enjoying that book a day or two after that was creatively really liberating for me.
So it was a good job you were asked to do that talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's life-changing.
Because I was aware of Kindle, and I was aware what people were doing, But I was so caught up in that kind of treading water of traditional publishing, of going, I need to come up with a new concept, I need to get that bought by a publisher, I need to write it and be thinking of what the next thing is. Because of that, I never had a chance to investigate it. But when schools were going, come and talk to us about it, that, for a lot of children's authors, that becomes a big part of their income, because schools will pay authors to come in and do writing workshops. So I thought, well, I could make money from delivering this workshop because no one else is doing it that I'm aware of. And then I realised, I can make much more money by just doing it for myself.
So this was this series, Space Team.
That was a Space Team series, yes.
Now I've been on a strict diet of very in-genre fiction for the last couple of years, so I haven't yet read this, but it's on my list because I was a huge Douglas Adams fan.
Yes, good.
And it speaks very Douglas Adams-y to me. I guess it must have been an influence.
Absolutely, yeah, that's very much an influence, yeah. Douglas Adams, Red Dwarf, I grew up obsessed with Red Dwarf, that's an influence as well. Terry Pratchett's an influence and all that stuff. And that's the first book. There are book 12 came out earlier this month.
Wow.
So 12 books in the series. There's
quick.
a 3-book spin-off series that features a character from book 5, has his own spin-off. And I've written the first in a new comedy superhero series as well. 16 books does that make in the last 2.5 years?
So that wouldn't have been possible on a traditional contract.
No. I mean, I have a traditional publishing deal at the moment. I've just delivered the 3rd book. And basically, one book came out in 2017, one came out in 2018, and one came out in 2019. So there's a year gap between books in that series. And especially if you're targeting children, if you're going, right, a 12-year-old reads that book.
Well, they're 14 by the time.
When they're 15, 14, 15, they're no longer interested in that series. So being able to put them out quite quickly has certainly been a benefit to me.
And the time it takes the trad industry to produce a book, and I've got friends who've been, 2-year process from manuscript to publication. Does it make a demonstrably better book, or is there aspects of the quality?
No, absolutely not. No, because that book is not being worked on that entire time. One of my books, the first book with HarperCollins, I wrote it in 2007. I wrote it over the course of 6 months. It went through a few rewrites, and then it was done. And that book came out in 2010. During those 3 years, it sat doing nothing. It wasn't like it was like a fine wine that was maturing in some way. It just
being tinkered with every day.
Yeah, it just sat there, and then came out in 2010. And then, so no, there's not. I write quickly. I think the books that I've written quickly are some of the best books that I've ever written. There are books that I have laboured over for months and months and months on end, and certainly from my perspective, they are not any better than those that I've written in 3 weeks.
And financially, has it scaled up in the way that your calculator predicted?
Yes, it has done. For me, it has been literally life-changing. As a traditionally published author, I knew I could pay my bills the next month, and I hoped that something would come up that I could pay my bills the following month. And I lived like that for 8 years, constantly paranoid and constantly having to check email every night in case someone was going, could you write this? Could you ghost write this book for us? So I would constantly be going, okay, I need to find work. Through Indie, I now know I can pay my bills 2 years from now. So it's given me that cushion to be able to go, okay, I can take the foot off the gas and I can just enjoy what I'm doing, and I can enjoy spending time with my kids. My son's 16, he's going to be heading off to university in a couple of years, and my daughter's 9. But by going indie, it's given me that financial cushion. I can say, do you know what? We're taking the summer off and we're going to go and travel. We're going to just hang out together and have fun.
So is the traditional industry unfair to authors?
I would say very much so, yeah. I would say strictly from an earnings point of view, if a $6.99 book sells, for example, I get 7.5% of the net price of that book that the bookshop has paid for it. Now, if that book's in a supermarket, that supermarket has paid 75 pence for that copy. So I'm getting 7.5% of that 75 pence. So people go, oh, great, my book's stocked I've sold 10,000 copies via Asda or whatever. And then they get a royalty statement that's 200 quid because it's been bought in so cheaply and they've got a small percentage of that money. So even if a book sells at $6.99, at best I will get 35 pence, 40 pence for it. A $2.99 book sells on Kindle and I get £2.10 or thereabouts. So I can sell far fewer books and make much more money.
Yeah, and cover design's important, and editing's important, and the marketing. But you write the book, and it's got to be worth more than the industry. I always think it's got to be worth more than the traditional industry pays the author
I think
for creating the book.
When I'm in schools, I talk to kids and I say, right, I have written every word in this book. A lot of my books, they're not illustrated. They've got a cover, and that's the only illustration. And I say, I've written every word in this 350-page book. How much money do you think I've earned from it? Or how much money do I get per copy? And the kids will all say £5 or £3 or so when you say about 10 pence, they are horrified, and rightly so, I think.
It's good that you're talking to kids about that aspect of it.
Because
you don't shy away from talking about the financial.
Yeah, because there's an assumption they go, okay, you write children's book, therefore you are J.K. Rowling, therefore you are a billionaire, and
It's always an exception that proves the rule.
So
right.
if you go, actually, well, what do you think? So then you go, okay, so if I'm making 10 pence a copy, how many copies do I need to sell to make an average income, an average yearly income? And suddenly they kind of do the calculations and they realise that you have to sell a lot of books to make any sort of money. I think the average author earnings in the UK now is something like £4,000, I think, it's something tiny. And it seems to be falling year on year. It seems to be that publishers' income is going up, publishers' profits are going up, and authors' earnings are going down.
Yeah, and just before you, I'm not sure at what point they're going to be transmitted, so it may be weeks apart, but we had Michelangelo, who made a celebrity appearance
I noticed him
at the beginning of the interview. So it's interesting, his kind of organisation as well. So not everybody's going to be up for doing the whole self-publishing thing themselves.
No.
But that's a much better option than anything being offered by the
Absolutely,
trad.
yeah.
Five down.
If you can, anything that gives you a bigger percentage of profits is worth it.
percentage.
Yeah, well that's it. You've done all the work essentially. Yeah. The problem with the big publishing houses in particular, so HarperCollins, for example, they have a massive building in the centre of London which has to be paid for.
And lots of people working in there who don't earn revenue.
Absolutely. So they need to justify their salaries. So they go, okay, so you're doing all that. So by justifying their salaries, a lot of the time it is tweaking your book. They'll say, what if we did that? What if we added that? And I've had this marketing idea, which they then go, yeah, well, I haven't got the money for that, so we'll market David Williams' book instead.
The idea.
Yeah, that's it. So they'll try and contribute stuff, but as a result, they're getting paid from your book. So if you divvy up the cost of your book, 50% goes to the bookshop, because they buy it in at half price. And then you go, okay, so there's the editor, there's a cover designer, there's distribution, there's printing, there's the cost of this massive building in the centre of London, there's the 200 staff who work there, and then down at the bottom is me, the author, and you'll get what's left at the end. So it's not an unfair system. It's not a fair system. Sorry, it's a very unfair system. I think.
Doesn't feel right, does it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Space Team then. Which I'm quite excited about. Was this the genre that you wanted to write? Was the Ben 10 writer, the ghostwriting, jobbing writer work until you could get to the point where you could write this?
There was a lot of jobbing writer work. I've written over 100 books for kids. I think about 20 of them have my name on them. The rest were either ghostwritten from the start, or I kind of went, can we not put my name on that book? So I've written a real range of stuff, non-fiction and fiction and comedy and horror and stuff. My love as a reader has always been comedy and science fiction. It's been those two things. I like things that make me laugh, and I like science fiction. So I thought I'm going to mash that together and see what happens. And I enjoy writing them. I get a real, especially now later in the series, when anything bad happens. A friend of mine passed away in October, and I wasn't due to write another Space Team book, but I wanted to go back and hang out with them again. It felt like I was going
because your friends
back with these friends, and I almost feel like I'm kind of just channeling what they do now, because I know them so well that in any given situation I know how they will react to that situation. So I'm almost just an observer watching. I just chuck these situations at them and then I observe their reaction to it. So they've become friends of mine, which sounds tragic on a number of levels. They've kind of become real people.
Not to writers and readers.
Well, this is true, yeah. They've become real people from my point of view.
And how easy was it to market and be successful with this? Because comedy, science fiction, we adored the same things, but when I look around, few and far between, really, of the books on the shelves.
I was surprised by the demand there was for it, because I hadn't heard of the whole idea of right to market or any of that stuff. If I had, I may never have written Space Team. So I wrote something that I wanted to write, and I think what's happened as a result of that is the people that are looking for that because there is a really ardent fan base for comedy sci-fi. And when they find something they like, they become ultra passionate about it. So they become the best ambassadors for the series are the fans. You know, I have a community has sprung up around it, and they will create their own little memes, and they'll go, I had this idea for a t-shirt, could you make that t-shirt? And so I'd make Space Team t-shirts or Space Team mugs or whatever. So they've become, because maybe there's not a huge amount of it out there, and some of what is out there is not great, that when they find something they like, they become really passionate about it. So you might not have the scope of reaching 10 million potential readers, but you might have 500,000 readers who really love what you do.
Dedicated.
And if you can find anything like that number, then you've made it. You know, if you can find, it's that whole thing, if you can find 1,000 who will buy everything you put out, you're set for life.
Are you going to have your own con one day?
I don't know. I've started getting invited to stuff because I write comics as well. So I write. I've written the Beano. So I write.
Wow.
If you're,
Beano's being rebooted a bit.
It is, yeah. Beano's constantly being rebooted. Yeah, but if you mention the Beano to anyone outside the UK, they just
have no
look
idea.
at you
So
like,
the Beano was Dennis the Menace and Nasher.
yeah, a kind of British staple. Is that kind of comic?
Yeah, it's a
that's
naughty
been-
schoolboys comic, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's been around for about 75 years or something now. Been around a long time. So I wrote, and I've written some American comics, and as a result of writing one of those, I got asked to write for a TV series in the States, an animated TV series, starring Bryan Cranston and Chris Pine. So I did that. So I do a few different things, and I've started to get people asking about coming to cons now.
You're
so,
going to be sat on one of those desks.
yeah, no, I said just
Photographs and,
signing.
Apparently it's
Signed
very
photographs.
lucrative.
So I'm told, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I went to one with my son, and I can't remember who it was. We're going to go and see, and it says, the autograph is 45 quid. Just like, you're all right, just fake it. There we go.
I think I paid £80 for a photograph with Carrie Fisher once,
Yeah.
and that was the best £80.
Yeah, well,
I spent.
that's true. There are some people who are worth paying for, I suppose.
Okay, so let's talk about the writing process for Space
Yes.
Theme. So you sat there and you had the genesis. We talked about the influences earlier. And how did you approach writing this? First of all, this is not for children.
Not for children, no. That's why my children's books are under Barry Hutchison. The Space Team series and the adult stuff is Barry J. Hutchison. So he's the middle initial. I did that Ian M. Banks thing. Of
Yes,
going,
I like it. Fellow Scott.
Yeah. So that's it's under a slightly different name, but not much. The writing process for it there was no planning involved. I had this nugget of an idea, and I sat down and wrote it, and then it was finished. That's basically the whole process for it. It was like,
Thanks for fleshing it out there. It's
it was
great.
like. The idea actually came. There's a bit at the back of the book. There's kind of an author note at the back of the book, because the book, the inspiration for the characters came. My mum was really ill. She was dying of cancer at the point, and we were sitting by our bedside every night. Myself and my dad took it in turns to sit at our bedside in the hospital, which made for long, sleepless nights. And I remember looking out the window one night of the hospital, and I live in the Highlands, so there's not a lot of light pollution. And the stars were just like incredible. You could see the entire galaxy sort of spread out. And I just sat and daydreamed. And I thought about, what could potentially be going on out there, and the idea for the characters came about kind of one night sitting in the hospital, delirious with lack of sleep.
They all dropped in.
And it kind of came in. And then and that was, a few years before I wrote it. And then when I thought I wanted to write something, that presented itself again in my head, and I thought, that's what I'm doing. And in the author's notes at the back of that first book, I mentioned that. I talk about the genesis of it and my mum's illness, and the number of people who email me who say, I'm going through cancer treatment at the moment, or I'm watching a loved one go through cancer treatment, and the books have made me laugh today, is incredible. It's the single best email I've ever had came in November last year, and it had a really bad week. It had my dad's brother-in-law was really ill, was in hospital, and I was running about doing everything. And this email came through from a woman who said her teenage daughter, had died in February of that year. And she said, and today my family came running through because they heard me laugh out loud. It says, and it's the first time I have laughed in 11 months. And that was like properly mind-blowing. It was that. Prior to that, I thought, well, this is really fun.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid quite well for it. But it hadn't occurred to me that the books you put out there, the effect they have on other people, and it's not necessarily as major as that, but someone that's just having a really terrible day, and they can be taken out of that day for a couple of hours by reading the book, or a couple of minutes, just gives them enough of a breather to go, right, I can tackle the world again. You know, so all that stuff I think is really is just things we don't consider necessarily.
Yeah, it can mean a huge amount to people, and that's lovely and testament to your writing, I think.
Well, it was just the right book at the right time, I think, for someone.
And of course, very similar to Douglas Adams' experience of lying drunk in a field in Czechoslovakia or somewhere like that, hitchhiking, and he looked up at the stars and thought there must be a guide.
Yeah,
so I wish I had the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, not just let's say he came up with that idea.
Yeah.
And I think that was a few years before he and John Lloyd or whoever it was sat down and started.
The radio version first, I think,
I can't remember the guy's name. He looks a bit like a dishevelled version of John Lloyd.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll think of his name later. Anyway, great. So you sat down, annoyingly for those of us who work very hard on trying to plot books, you sat down and wrote this.
Yeah,
almost fully formed.
Yeah, that was the easiest one. After that, it became more difficult.
Okay.
So I wrote it. I spewed it onto the page basically. I mean, I had the benefit of traditional publishing for 8 years is that I've worked with loads of editors, and I'm lucky enough to have a pretty solid understanding of what makes a story work. So I know what should happen then, what should happen then, and what should happen then. You know, so I can divide it in my head into acts, and I say, okay, this happens in Act 1, this happens in Act 2, this is how it finishes. So I had that kind of experience and knowledge. So it made the writing process fairly straightforward. It's quite a simple story. It's very much, even though it is comedy, it's very much a proper science fiction novel as well. There is a plot, there is a proper high stakes plot, which I thought was quite important. But at its heart, it's a sitcom. It's an ongoing sitcom about 5 idiots in space, basically. So that first book, I wrote it, and I thought, I don't need to do any real quality control because it was an experiment that would allow me to do the workshops. I wasn't really invested in it in the sense that I thought, this has to work, this has to be a success. I thought, I've done that, but now let's see how you upload it. And it was almost like the book was secondary to that. It was like, I now need to figure out this process, and I was making notes about how I could deliver that workshop in schools, how I could talk about it. And then, I checked the sales the next couple of days, and it was like, people are actually buying it. And then some reviews started to come in that were really positive, and I thought, actually, I kind of almost accidentally created a book, because that was just part of the learning process for self-publishing. So the book was
you write quite quickly. I mean, this is not.
I mean, average I write about 5,000 words a day on average.
Okay, that's pretty. That's good.
My record is 17,000 in a day. For a book that just would not die. I thought, I've got about 5,000 words left. I'll do, and then it's like, no, actually, I have another chapter to write, and 17,000 words later, I kind of staggered through to bed, basically.
And do you write in Word or Scrivener?
I write in Word, yeah. Scrivener's never done it for me. I know a lot of people swear by Scrivener, and I've tried both the Mac and the Windows versions of Scrivener, and it just doesn't work for me. I just I sit down, I write from the start, and I finish at the end, and I don't tend to move things around or any of that stuff. So Scrivener, there's a lot going on, whereas Word, it's a white page that I can type on.
Can end up taking quite a long time to load when you open a 100,000 words.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
manuscript. Okay, so now you say you do plot the books a bit before you start.
Yeah, a bit more, and it depends on the book. I did most of the Space Team books. I have the concept, I know where it ends, and what readers like about Space Team is just the weird route it takes to get there. So basically, I just let it wander a bit. The spin-off series, Dan Dedman's Space Detective, was kind of a noir detective series set in space, basically. And so I had to plot those quite closely, because I thought, right, okay, so I need a mystery, I need to know who done it, and I need to seed these clues through it. And so I looked at.
So you need to know what's happened.
So I did that in a spreadsheet, and I literally did scene 1, and this is what happens, and I broke down, and then I grouped those into chapters, and I was able to see the plot, and I could go, okay, that's a really exciting bit. So I got really analytical and really kind of geeky, and went, okay, I made a graph now of excitement levels in the book, and did. But the Space Team books far outsell those books,
right.
so that it doesn't guarantee that book will be better necessarily.
And because it's science fiction, do you have a kind of universe rules that you create for time travel or whatever can't happen, and you can travel at light speed?
The rules are very, very loose, and there are certain things. So there's a big organisation that's kind of the galactic government, and everyone has a translation chip which is implanted in their head. But they don't.
Babelfish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he actually references that the character in the first book. He says, "Oh, like a babelfish," and no one knows what he's talking about. You know, but it has a censorship function because part of me was still worried that kids would pick it up, and I thought if it's full of bad language, then I'm setting a bad example for these youngsters who are accidentally.
That's the child writer in you.
Yeah. So there's a censorship function which changes all the swearing into nonsense words, basically. So there's like fonk and shiz and bamston, and that's now become amongst the Space Team fans. That's how they swear now in real life. You know,
like Father Ted,
they're saying feck and all that stuff. Yeah, but Smeg, Red Dwarf.
Smeg, yes,
Red Dwarf did it. So I kind of did that. So that's one of the rules. But other than that, anything can happen. There's a multiverse spanning book where the main character is called Cal Carver, and he meets the Carver Council, which is made up of 30 other Cal Carvers from other alternate realities who have come together to stop this kind of multiverse-threatening event. So there's time travel. There's basically anything. There's no real science rules as such. Someone emailed me to say, how fast can the ship go? And my answer is always, it can go as fast as it needs to go to arrive just in the nick of time. That's the speed. That's its top speed. And I did a talk before in 20 Books London last year, and someone was saying, what's the technology for making the ship go to faster than light speed? And I said, you do that with a lever, and that then fires you forward. So push the lever forward, and you go at light speed. Pull it back, and you slow down. And that's the level of the science involved. So some people, who like really sciencey science fiction are turned off by that. A lot of people who just like a funny adventure book which is set in space, they like that sort of
A
thing.
really good hot cup of tea, which I think was the essential ingredient in
Absolutely,
probability drive.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Barry, it's been great talking to you. What's
Thank
next
you
for
very
you?
much.
You said you may have come to the end of Space Team?
Well, I haven't definitely come to the end overall. I'm taking a little bit of a break. I'm starting a new spin-off series, which is set in the Space Team universe. A character who's introduced in book 10, I want to say, is getting his own spin-off. I've started a superhero series called Sidekicks. So the first one is the Sidekicks Initiative, and that's about the equivalent of the Justice League are all killed in a horrible attack on their space station, and their long-retired sidekicks, who are now in their 40s, are kind of brought out of retirement reluctantly to form this superhero team to stop this big threat. So I'm working on the second book in that series. And then I will go back and do another space team. So I've actually got a new book that I've written, a young adult science fiction, which I've written a few years ago and never done anything with, which I've reworked, and that's coming out in April. And then those two books, and then another space team in August, thereabouts.
And the majority of this is self-published, but you do have a trad contract still? Or?
I've just submitted the last trad book I'm contracted to do. It's a series for 9 to 12-year-olds called Spectre Collectors, about this ghost hunting organisation. So I've just finished the last one of those. Otherwise, my schedule is all indie stuff.
That will be it for trad for you, you think?
Yes, certainly at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I never say never to anything, but at the moment, my future is indie.
Brilliant. Barry, thank you so much indeed for coming on to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Love Barry. I really cannot wait. I was saying to you just before we started recording that I am sort of restricting myself to reading books in the genre that I'm writing in, but I can't wait to devour Space Team books from Barry. A lovely guy, and you have to understand it when he says that the traditional industry is unfair to writers. It doesn't pay them enough.
No, that's right. He actually on the Amazon panel this morning, and he may have mentioned this in the interview. He had his books in ASDA. Mm-hmm. And did he mention that?
Yes, he did.
He did. So, and made
about 10 pence or something.
Yeah, made 200 quid after they sold 6,000 copies into one of the supermarkets.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. That's how it is. You get these big discounts. You think it's going to be the start of something special, and then you realise that the discount is reducing your royalty. Your agent takes some of that, and before you know it, you've got barely enough for a slap-up meal.
Yeah. And
as Mrs. Hutchison.
As Barry said, there's a big building in central London that needs to be paid for. And it's a win-win because now he's selling his books and he's making the money from it. So it's life-changing for him. But he's also selling the books cheaper than the industry was selling. He's selling them at $4.99 instead of them being at $8.99. So it's good for the readers too.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's a winner, baby. That's a fact. We have lots of people wandering past. We're in the middle of a fairly busy thoroughfare here. So for those who are not watching the YouTube show, lots of people wandering past as the fair goes into lunchtime on the final day.
Yeah, and we're breaking
professional.
We're breaking all the rules.
Oh yeah,
we're not supposed to have a tripod.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? It's the last take. This is the last take.
You're going to throw us out.
And then it's home. So have you enjoyed yourself at LBF?
I have, yeah. It's been great. I always have fun, but it's really busy. I don't sit down the whole time, basically. So I do the Amazon panels in the morning, and then there's a line of people waiting to talk to the authors on the Amazon stand afterwards. I had dinner with the KDP staff on Tuesday night, and then I had drinks with Amazon Publishing last night, and then the SPF drinks. So it's a long few days. So I'm looking forward to going home now.
Yeah, and there hasn't been, I don't think there's been any major indie world announcements this time around. Kobo here, Amazon, this time last year they were porting over from CreateSpace to KDP Print on Demand. That was their big thing. Darren has hinted, I think he's spoken to both you and me, Darren Hardy from Amazon. He wants to come back on the podcast, by the way. So we're going to visit Darren in his new Amazon HQ building in London in the next few weeks and get an interview with him. And what we'll probably do before that is ask people what they want Amazon to answer. So we'll get some questions in the bag. But Darren was saying, there's stuff coming down the line. So maybe this time next year, we'll be able to talk about some changes with Amazon. I think what else? Publish Driver here. Now they've announced quite an interesting little thing. Publish Driver, an aggregator, that they are introducing a royalty split ability. So for collaborators who perhaps go 70-30 or 50-50 on a book, the royalty split's done for you, so you don't have to pour everything into a spreadsheet. I think Mike Landale might like that because his spreadsheets are phenomenally complicated with this collaboration. Any other sort of industry announcements you picked up while?
No announcements, but I did mention to Darren that we were thinking about doing a live show next year, kind of a self-publishing formula conference, and he thinks there's a good chance we might be able to have it in Amazon HQ.
Wow.
Which would be pretty cool. So we'll watch this space. I'm looking at young Tom here. He'll probably be involved in working on that. So
come to shot, Tom, and turn around and film the camera so people can see.
Young Tom didn't know he was going to be getting into event planning, but that's.
We're breaking the fourth wall here. We're doing everything wrong. We're disruptors. Right, you can go back now.
That is still somehow out of shot.
So that's we'll see. It's still very, very early, but they seem like they might be interested. So
would you come to an SPF live event?
I would come.
You
It'd kind of be pretty pointless if I didn't come, but it's,
I'll come. That's two of us.
That's two, yeah. So we think not expensive, probably covering its costs. So like the 50 bucks.
We could do this comedy double act live.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't get. We've lots of shaking of heads behind the camera.
We are at that point now where we know each other so well we can finish each other's sandwiches.
Sandwiches. Yes, that's right.
Good. Okay, well that's it for another year from the London Book Fair. Our next live in-person event will be in July in New York City at Thriller Fest. You won't be there for that one, I don't believe.
Not at the moment.
You're not doing Romance Writers of America either this year, are you?
Not this year, no.
Which is a bit of a long haul for people who want to do both those conferences because they are back-to-back in New York. So it's 2 or 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks in New York in July, which is hard going. But then we'll be at NINC in St. Pete Beach in Florida in September.
I am going to that.
You will be there.
I'm going to Vegas.
Las Vegas in November, which is the big one. I think probably by the time this podcast goes out, that would have opened up for tickets, and that's going to be a huge indie event. That's it.
So yes, this episode of the podcast has been sponsored by Alka-Seltzer and Nurofen.
Can I go and lie down? The sun's gone in. Oh, the sun's out again.
Here's the sun.
Turn that down a bit. I'm going to go and lie down. I'd better check my blood alcohol level before I drive home.
Don't drive anywhere.
Don't drive anywhere. Thank you so much indeed for joining us for this episode of the Self-Publishing Show. And it only leaves me to say it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/self-publishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.